What's going on, internet? I've got another video review for you guys, and this one's about Resident Evil 6. Hooray! Even since before its unveiling, Resident Evil 6 has had an uphill battle. Not only was RE5 a soulless mess, but Dead Space was breathing down its neck, single-handedly dethroning it in the action horror genre. With 4 campaigns, a budget that could feed half of the Earth's population, and almost a small country's worth of developers, RE6 seemed more than willing to take on this nearly overwhelming adversity with just sheer horsepower. Strangely, even with all these resources, Resident Evil 6 is one of the most poorly constructed, mindless drivel that AAA gaming has seen in the past few years. RE6 does have 4 campaigns, but none of them convey good tale. Chris Redfield from Resident Evil 1 and 5, Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil 2 and 4, Jake Mueller, who is Albert Wesker's son, and the mysteriously and lovely Ada Wong each star in their own messy campaign, but you only barely start to understand what is happening after you complete all of them. Even then, it feels like a bland retread of every old topic in the book. Umbrella Corporation, viruses, and the world is ending yet again. It's all so silly and over the top that it's hard not to feel numb by all this stuff coming. The silliness is even more apparent due to the fact that everything is always on fire all of the time. Pacing isn't even in the vocabulary here, since every moment is at a high, a crappy high, but a high nonetheless. Despicable pacing plagues the narrative just as badly as the gameplay. Poorly explained set pieces are thrown in with such an alarming frequency that it dumbs down any impact they could have had. Of course, nearly all of them are atrociously designed due to cheap deaths, but they don't allow valleys to have the player appreciate the peaks. Not to mention all of the times you need to mash buttons and do other stupid quicktime events that the game throws in at an alarming pace. Boss fights are bad in their own regard, but they demonstrate this point to the fullest. Foes in all shapes and sizes always pop up, but expect them to never stay dead. Because Capcom always needs to have something big on the screen at all times, they resurrect the bosses at a comically stupid level to the point where the characters are even bitching about it themselves. Shooting is a similar train wreck. Enemies aren't carefully placed, but more sloppily scattered about the levels to, again, get the facade of constant pressure. There's no nuance to this shooting. You must just unstrategically dump rounds into hordes of brain-dead enemies. Good luck getting ammo too, since the game is even stingy about that. Because of ammo constraints and the overwhelming quantity of foes, I'd usually just hightail it and book it out of there, so when you're talking about a game, that's usually not a good thing. The overabundance of enemies could be attributed to the cancerous and forcing co-op. Leon, Chris, and Ada all have really generic partners that really have nothing really to do with the story, but the gameplay offenses are far worse. Almost every area requires the AI partner's cooperation or approval to get through some door or climb some ladder, and waiting for them can get really old pretty quickly. Co-op just doesn't fit into this game, and these brainless examples, along with enemy placement, just prove my point. It's worth mentioning that you can't build much tension with someone always with you, because no matter what, there is an AI or a human with you. But I don't want to give you any false pretense that RE6 tries to be a horror game in any sense of that phrase. As if I hadn't made it clear, RE6 is just atrociously designed, something that continued to surprise me in my nightmarish time with the game. Rather than detailing every single thing, here's a nice little convenient list I compiled with only some of the issues I ran across. The ammo was scarce, there's too many quicktime events, the down but not out mechanic just doesn't work, herbs are ridiculously rare, the save system is deceiving, enemies can just shrug off attacks and charge right through to attack you, the game makes you automatically aim at times, camera control is yanked from the player, instant deaths are poorly told to the player, bosses don't really convey very well when you're actually hitting them and doing damage, the dodge barely works, and that motherfucking part with the ice in Jake's campaign. Off-screen attacks, unavoidable attacks out of cutscenes.
She might not be working alone.
The cover system is wonky. I'm just gonna stop here, but even with the kitchen sink approach that they take, you'd think they'd at least get one thing right in the gameplay facet. It's just straight up appalling how a game even shipped like this. If I were to say some positive things about Resident Evil 6, it would be that it has strong technical visuals, and boss designs are disgustingly cool looking in a way that appeals to my inner 12-year-old. Yes, of course that means there's a dinosaur zombie, but it was pretty cool looking. On a similar note, the silly scenes are at least captured well, and they look like they were shot with some pretty expensive gear. It could be weird what they're saying all the time, but you know, at least it looks pretty good. Resident Evil 6 is terrible, but in a way that kept shocking me. Usually when games are bad, they just kind of maintain that sewage-like quality until the end of the game. In the 25 or so hours I spent enduring Resident Evil 6, I always got a steady supply of something new that was completely terrible or abysmal or just poorly crafted. This just indicates how much went into Resident Evil 6, but none of it, from the gameplay and the narrative, had any expertise or thought put into it. It's ironic that Resident Evil 4 deserves to be taught in schools for great design, and Resident Evil 6 should be in the same classroom on how not to design a game. I gave the game a 3 out of 10, and the full text is on the site, so if you want a more detailed analysis of why this game sucks, just go ahead and check that out. See you guys later, and thanks for watching. Bye.
Leon?
Sherry?
Leon.
Chris? Piers Nibbins?
Deborah.
Ada.
Leon.
Ada! Leon. Piers! Sherry!